good afternoon, everybody. 下午安，如果你哋唔講嘢，我唔知道有冇人喺度啊。So good afternoon. Okay, thank you. 係啦 because I cannot see you, but I can hear you. So welcome, and it's my pleasure to come here and facilitate this afternoon's session on open collaborative innovation. And I studied at Hong Kong University before, and I have been working with Oxfam, and now I have started some social business in environmental concerns, Carbon Care Asia, and also another one called Carbon Care Inno Lab, okay? There will be many labs here. So what we did was to promote concerns for climate change and innovative solutions. I was in Paris for the Climate Change Summit last December. So I'm glad that we can share some of the things that people are doing here. So I want to, first of all, say, give you some logistic information. So if you have got the translating machines, channel 1 is 廣東話 Cantonese, and channel 2 is 普通話. Channel 3 is English. And then if anyone who needs a Cantonese description, audio description, then you can raise your hands and colleagues, staff will give it to you. I have one here, so I can hear your actions described to me. So, however, I of course prefer to hear your voice and say and others, okay, and actions as well. So now, what we will be doing this afternoon is we have two excellent young people coming to share with us. Liz Barry from Public Lab in United States, and also He Shan from Greennovation in China. So one of the most challenging thing, and most exciting thing is that they will collaborate on a project, and they will share with you afterwards. So stay tuned. First of all, we want to invite Liz to share with us first. Liz, Public Lab, as you have read it in the program materials, has a mission of promoting citizen-level collaborations in scientific solutions to problems that we meet in our backyard, or front yard, okay? So I won't go into detail because Liz is the best person to tell us what their organization is doing, what she wants you to know. So may we now invite Liz, so give her a welcome. Okay.
Hi, everybody. It is my great honor and genuine privilege to be here at Making a Difference conference. It's my second time, and it's even better this time around. To start with, I wanted to introduce, kind of share one of my new toys. It's very bright and colorful. Let's see if we can take a look at some rainbows. So, when we're using a device to look at light at its component wavelengths, we can realize that in this LED light bulb, there's actually red, green, and blue light. Now, when we switch to a compact fluorescent bulb, if I can point this thing properly, Oh, live demos. We can see that there are different, the rainbow has changed. The main point of this is showing that we're actually seeing the element mercury that's releasing energy after the electricity is run through the light bulb. And that is a characteristic that lets us identify that material. Because mercury is known what wavelengths it has, we can actually use it to calibrate this equipment, which I haven't described yet, but it's just a kind of an elaborate cardboard box with a very thin slit in front, a webcam in the back, and right in front of the webcam, at a slight angle, there's actually a DVD. How is a DVD useful in this scenario? Well, we can actually take it, and now it may seem strange to destroy nice things like this, but actually it's for science. So you actually just take a scissors and cut straight through it, and take advantage of the fact that a DVD has so many small, thin lines. It can work to split this light beam into the rainbow. So when you try this at home, which I do advocate, you can cut yourself a little slice and peel it apart on the edges. You take off the opaque part, and you're left with a part that you can see through and that the light can pass through. When you're, after you scan the bulb, this simple software that the public lab community wrote, it automatically reads the spectrum and recognizes it as mercury. And so in this way, we go from a picture of a rainbow to a calibrated spectrum. And now I'm going to scan one more thing, which is actually an oil sample. These small bottles I have in front are a selection of crude oils, and I'll explain why we're using those in a moment. I'm going to just line up my equipment so I can pass it through the sample jar. And the wavelength we get that's passing through the oil is much different. At first, we're seeing that it's simply not as bright. But secondly, we're seeing that the color has actually changed. And that's what we're going to take advantage of in this little experiment. So I'm going to switch over to my slideshow now. So the Public Laboratory for Open Technology and Science is a community and a nonprofit. We're dedicated to making environmental investigations something that anybody can do and do well in the environments they care about. We are specifically focused on petrochemicals for a lot of our work. Petrochemical use is driving climate change globally and polluting our homes and backyards locally. In Public Lab, we focus on researching those local issues, understanding that it's most important to our families and communities, and that there is a global impact. We help each other by promoting a hands-on, do-it-yourself way of working. We go outside, hopefully with a good pair of boots, and observe the environments we care about. We take advantages of some simple principles, like how light passes through matter to extend the ways we can sense our environment. A simple observation well known in science is that oil will fluoresce or glow under ultraviolet light. And different oil fluoresces differently. To add to that insight, we needed a simple paper container to hold this laser pointer at this sample so that we could cause it to glow and be read by the spectrometer. And so we made a kit, which is now distributed, something like this, that you can fold up yourself with that DVD that you'll cut apart and a webcam. Oh, and on this kit, you can read, there's links to the actual people whose work contributed to figuring out how long should the box be? What's the best angle of the camera? And what about that slit? How thin or how wide? Are DVDs really accurate enough? All of those questions have been explored by people just like you, having a hobby, but contributing so that the whole world can learn from this open source knowledge. Now it's something called an oil testing kit. It's a global collaborative experiment. People around the world have received these pre-packaged oil samples. We know they're all the same. When you get them, you put them into a small container and scan them with your own equipment. This chart is showing that every grade of oil is reading slightly differently, and we're beginning to build up a database of known oil. This technique is also being applied to food oil. I know there's a lot of lines on this screen, but the highest one, the blue line, is 100% olive oil. And going down in order from red to pink to green to black is decreasing amounts of olive oil, 75% pure, 50% pure, 25% pure. And so we're looking to connect with people who also want to scan oil and begin to understand what's in their environments and in their kitchens. We do have unknown oils we need to identify outside. Spills along train tracks that carry cars full of oil. And even learning about gutter oil and where does it come from and where does it go. The equipment is also being used in a different way to try to see farther away, to identify what is being burned in smokestacks across the fence from where people are living. And inside the home, this technique was used to scan different soap products and figure out which one was irritating the baby's skin. So, zooming out a little bit from this investigation into oil, the public laboratory is a worldwide community with a global focus. We use simple activities that we can do outside, such as fly a very large kite on a very long string with a very small camera, so that we can each better understand our environments and know what kind of changes to advocate for. For example, this is one of our earliest projects, and I've shown this before at MaD, when after the British petroleum oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, the airspace was closed by the government. And actually, it was just regular people and fishermen on boats getting together to capture this first imagery of the oil sheen. Because airspace was closed, no journalists had access to real information, and media outlets around the world carried this, and to this day, it's still in court. In contrast, the data released by the government was of low resolution, and it left people with many questions. So when we could supplement the data with these high-resolution photos, we could see a number of things. For instance, in this case, we see the shoreline, which would normally be the color of sand, is now the color of oil and tar. And the white line, was an absorbent material designed to stop the tar from reaching the shoreline. But in fact, there's no tar stuck to the material, and all of it is on the shoreline. Public Lab makes it simple for you to collect your own information, such as once you have an aerial photograph, you can simply upload it on top of an existing web map and position the corners to fit exactly. If you're using a drone and it has additional location information, it will automatically stitch it for you. And we release formats that are compatible with the databases and scientific formats used by industry and government. People around the world are now making maps, and it has also been strategic to begin contributing data to large providers such as Google, and actually overwriting the corporate data with local stories. To make sure everyone has access to it, we also print posters 4 times a year with the maps on the front and the community stories on the back on actual paper, and we distribute them physically around. What is all this open data used for? Well, mostly it's used to advocate for better environmental management. It helps citizens and government work together to improve our environmental practices. It can help gather evidence to enforce regulations in case they're being broken. And it can also serve as evidence in court. These 2 examples, the spectrometer and the aerial mapping, are just some examples of all the community-created open source projects in Public Lab. There are many. Innovation continues in Public Lab because as soon as one person learns how to do something, they publish it. Other people learn from it, and the way we have agreed to work with each other is that anything new that is developed on something that's already been published open source will itself be published and add to the growing knowledge commons for everyone's benefit. And we believe that generating knowledge is a powerful thing, and that when communities generate knowledge themselves, they better equip themselves with the ability to advocate for the changes they want to see in the world, such as putting pressure on a coal terminal to stop dumping directly into the river, or on a global petrochemical company to stop storing toxic waste that blows across everyone's homes and foods and playgrounds. Or to show that this is not the reality of life in this small village in Uganda. Actually, this land is used for a market. And by demonstrating this, people kept their land tenure for additional years, resisting the property developers. And in an example from my hometown, New York City, community investigators worked side by side with the government, who, when they tried to figure out where all the pipes were that went into this urban river, shown in the blue dots, the only pipes they could figure out was that one red dot. And so here come the locals in canoes and kayaks with infrared cameras, investigating plumes, looking behind walls, identifying where clean water is also still flowing, backing up their investigations with other community tests of bacteria counts in the water, and eventually convincing the federal government that an additional city block had to be converted to wetlands. This is now being envisioned along with 7 other streams that have been found, as well as some evidence in the form of circuit boards left over by the polluting company 50 years ago, who will now contribute some money to the restoration. The community is continuing to help with the restoration. Where can new wetlands be built in this urban river? By using non-toxic food dye, we can see the currents in the river and see where the sand has the best chance to survive and grow plants. Infrared imagery is being used to assess urban vegetation and urban farms and do detailed studies of which cover crops are most successful and which soil additions yield the most productivity in the plants. In cases where invasive species are clogging up a lake, you can take an aerial picture and process it to differentiate between 2 species and know where you have to concentrate your cleanup efforts. In the case of a nuclear power plant that's on the shoreline, the locals are very worried about a large storm damaging the integrity of the plant. But there's no laws making it illegal to have a nuclear plant on the ocean side. But there are some laws protecting how much hot water a facility can discharge into the ocean. Maybe you can see in this satellite photo the white plume coming from the edge of the land. There are laws about this. And so to use them to gain leverage over the plant, locals created a color-coded water temperature visualization, and now from their boats, they tow thermometers connected to LEDs that draw in color the extent of the water contamination. This is building up local political pressure to manage the plant better and eventually shut it down. My last 2 examples are both indoor and outdoor air quality. For indoor air quality, many of the plastics and the glue in the wood and foam in our furniture releases VOCs. And when your house is well ventilated, it's not a problem. But if your house is closed up, it can lead to toxic levels. And we're figuring out how to measure and also mitigate those. Of special concern to everybody around the world, especially in Asia, is the outdoor particulate matter. And by having such a large community focusing on understanding the technology, understanding what technology is used by the government to assess if the regulations are being met, assess if public health is being met, and then figure out, are the analog methods or the digital methods going to be most effective for the tools we build ourselves to collect authentic data of the environment we're experiencing. So in conclusion, I'd like to say Public Lab is an open community that anyone can join. There are chapters around the world, primarily Western Hemisphere in North, Central, and South America. Some activity in Europe and the Middle East. I'm excited to meet more people who want to work with Public Lab here in Asia. And a little bit later, we'll share about some of the work that's already started. Local leadership in Public Lab comes in the form of organizers who have an interest in sharing knowledge across different regions and quickly learning across different areas. And that's all I have to share for right now. Thank you very much.